My name is Kathy. I'm an alcoholic. Um, I was at Pavilion late June 2010 to September the 26th, 2010. And by the grace of God, I managed to keep myself sober. It was quite an experience, and we'll get to how I got there. My story is not, it, first of all, I'd like to start by reading you something because I think this applies to us. I love poetry and quotes and stuff like that. And this is just so, it touched me so much. Rumi, a 13th century poet, I think that's how you pronounce his name, but it doesn't matter. He said, "Study me as much as you like, you will not know me. For I differ in 100 ways from what you see me to be. Put yourself behind my eyes and see me as I see myself. For for I have chosen to dwell in a place you cannot see." So tonight I'm going to let you see as much as I possibly can. No, it gets better as you progress in sobriety and recovery. It really people see more and more of who you really are. So you're not behind that closed wall. I was born in Detroit in 1950. At that point, my dad was in the Korean War and didn't see me for about a year, I believe. And my mother, I believe, was working in a bar in Detroit. I have been told that her father took her to Detroit to work in the bars, and which was not really a good place for her to be because she was an alcoholic and she was a self-professed alcoholic. And died an alcoholic, of course, but she was still, I think, drinking a little bit, even though she had emphysema too. Anyway, I'm going to kind of go by decades here because I have a really boring story. I never got arrested. I never got a ticket. I didn't really lose anything before I got sober. It just, there's a lot of yets in my book. There's a lot of yets. And so to sum it all up, my early years, I was a thumbsucker. I was a nail biter, which I did until about 6 months before I got married. I was a sleepwalker, and I was a bedwetter. And if I'm not mistaken, I might have been in high school the last time I wet the bed. And my dad was so aggravated, and he was home from a long distance trip, but he was so aggravated, I guess, because my mother was, that he took the sheet off and wiped my face in it. And I think that was the last time that I wet the bed. Anyways, my dad went into trucking and he was gone all the time. Like for 3, 4, sometimes 4, 5, 6 weeks at a time. And my mother, of course, was trying to raise me and my sister at that point. And we were living in Miami when all of that happened. Somehow we got in Miami twice. I don't know how that, I don't remember how that happened. I don't know whether I blocked it out or I'm just too old to remember. But at any rate, I remember when he would come home from a long distance trip hauling furniture, he and my mother fought really bad. They had major fights. And I don't know whether I was a bad girl or what, but abuse began at that point. Mostly emotional abuse at that point toward me. One thing I do remember is my dad's brother visited us on occasion, and I remember crawling around on the floor, and this was in, like when I was 5. I remember crawling around on the floor and taking a sip of beer. But that was just a kid thing I did because it had no effect on me. Of course, I didn't want any more after that. It really, it was just something I did, just like kids do. One thing that left me a little bit shaken when I was in the 3rd grade, I have a real problem with spatial stuff and people giving me directions. And I was trying to get directions when I was in the 3rd grade in the library to go to the bathroom. and I couldn't understand where I was supposed to go. And so I peed in my pants in the bathroom. I mean, right there in the library. And that's pretty traumatic for a girl to be in the third grade and that happens to them. And it seems like things like that happen to me a lot. But I'm going to skip to the next decade, the 10 to 20 decade. Um, we decided that since my dad was trucking, he might make it home more often if we moved. And plus, we ran from a hurricane. Hurricane was coming, so we moved to this little town called Glenville, North Carolina. It's near Western Carolina University. It's deep in the mountains, and we moved there with my grandmother. That was one of the happiest times that I've ever had because I could crawl around in the laurel thickets. My grandmother taught me everything I knew. She taught me how to sew. She taught me how to cook. She was my protector too. When bad things happened and my mother got really irritated with me or nasty with me, she would always come to my defense and protect me. And that year, when I was in the 6th grade, I had the same teacher that my mother had when she was in school. And that year, my mother had my brother, and she drank while she was pregnant. And he only lived for 7 days. And that was another really traumatic experience. He died early Christmas morning. And I still have the bride doll that I got that Christmas. And it comes out every single Christmas as kind of a, whatever. Anyway, it comes out. I don't think I was real good in school. I had to stand at the board with my nose in a circle that was drawn too high for me. A lot. Had to stand on my tiptoes to keep my nose in the circle. And at home, I was in the corner all the time with a dare not to touch the corner, not to touch the walls. And I've probably spent, I can't even imagine how much time I spent in the corner. But at any rate, as much as I loved being in the mountains, because I'm a mountain girl. Yeah, there were some hard times, but that part of my life I liked. We ended up moving to just down the mountain to Walhalla, South Carolina. And that was when I was like in the 10th grade. That's not good when you're in the 10th grade and you have to make a move like that. But at any rate, that's when things got very, very, very uncomfortable with me. The physical abuse got much worse. My mom did not mind slapping me in front of a boyfriend, not at all. Quite embarrassing. And, for years, I had already had piano lessons and tap lessons and ballet lessons and standing up in front of people and reciting nursery rhymes. That's not who Kathy is. I do not like to be in front of people. And during that period of time, my mother decided that I needed to start being in pageants. And so I was in the Miss Walhalla pageant, and lo and behold, Kathy won. And I'm not telling you this because I'm proud or because I think it was an accomplishment, because to me, it's an embarrassment. I went on and had to participate in the Miss South Carolina pageant. And not very many people know that at all. And as a matter of fact, I have a sponsee that's on this, in this meeting right now. I'm not even sure I ever shared that with her. But anyway, I'll never forget walking across that stage in a bathing suit, in high heels, and my legs were shaking like wet noodles. That is not who I was. And then there was Apple Festival, Watermelon Festival. And you know what? There's not a Mr. America. And that just, really, you put women on the stage and you make them walk across the stage in a bathing suit and high heels? I don't think so. But anyway, that was a real painful part of my life because I do not like to be on display at all. Not now, not ever. Anyways, living at home was really, really very, very hard. And so what I did when I went to college, I was like a bird out of a cage. Man alive. I mean, I was free and I acted like I was free. I was a good student. I was a good student all through high school. I was a good student in college, and except for one quarter, we had a quarter system then, and I was threatened with my life if I didn't get my QPR back up. So it came back up. But at any rate, when I was in college, that's when I met my husband, who I was married to for almost 45 years before we divorced. Um, when I met my husband, this was 1968, 69, 1970. The hippies, the hard rock music. The first rock concert I ever went to was Iron Butterfly, and one of their famous songs is Inagata Davida. I mean, really. And there was a lot of alcohol. And the first time I drank alcohol, of course, I got as drunk as a skunk. It was some nasty bourbon, and never touched bourbon after that. But it was a funny thing. I never drank alcohol to become livelier and the part of the party. I drank alcohol to be able to put up with the party. And if I drank, I could find some other things to do rather than being with the people and not feel so bad about it. So I drank so I could get away. To get out of my head and not have to be in a crowd of people, because I've done test after test after test, and I'm an extreme introvert. Even on the Enneagram that I did a couple of weeks ago, damn if it didn't turn up a 5. Good gosh almighty, what more do you need? On the Myers-Briggs, I was extreme introvert. But anyway, so, I didn't, I drank for I drank for a reason that I don't know how many people drink for, and that was to escape the party in my head anyway. We had some college friends at that point that remained college friends for a long, long, long time with us. And I ended up, I lost my train of thought. We ended up, not only, of course, did we drink, but that's when the big time marijuana started. And so, that was mixed up with that too, but I didn't enjoy that near as much as I did drinking. When I was in college, I majored in math education. And, the way I was, and I need to go back to the way I was raised in a church. I was raised in a Southern Baptist church. And every Sunday, Wednesday night, Sunday night, Bible school, it didn't matter what. When I left, I felt like I had to repent or I was going to be run over by a car before I got back to my house. And I was doing a lot of walking at that point. By the time I got to college, I had to talk to a pastor, quote, professor, because I had this terrible fear of dying. I was convinced that if I didn't repent of what I was doing wrong, I was going to die. And so that started early on, that this spirituality thing, that I knew something was not right in my head. But anyways, I ended up at the end of my college career. I married my husband before I did my student teaching, and he was in the Army. And I went back to the mountains and did my student teaching in high school. And then I went down to Georgia to be with him. And all this period of time, I drank really hard in college while I was in college. But after I got out of college, I really didn't drink really hard. It was, I just settled back down into a fairly normal life. I didn't drink every day, and I didn't drink a lot. But when we were in Georgia, when he was in the Army, things were normal. Things were pretty normal then. And down there, I started teaching math in high school, and And there's not much to say about that because things were pretty normal. But then we moved back to the mountains of Western North Carolina, and the college friends were still there. These college friends are a part of my story all the way up until I got sober. And with the college friends, we did a whole lot of things. At that point, I started teaching elementary school, high school to elementary. And if it was an upper, why I won't like alcohol so much, I don't have a clue because it's really a downer. But if it was an upper, I liked it. I liked it until it started costing too much, and then I didn't like it so much. So I think that's why I settled on alcohol as my drug of choice, because I could be a cheap drug, and I'm a bit frugal. But the worst thing I've ever done in terms of driving a car is I drove a car one night when I had done LSD, and that was really, and I drove the car because everybody else decided I was the best one to drive. Well, you can imagine what kind of shape they were in. And this was up I-85 in Charlotte, coming from South Carowinds area. And I'll never forget that night. And that pretty much kept me from driving again when I was under any influence of any, more than maybe one beer or so. That kept me from doing that, which is one reason why I never got a ticket, I guess. But anyways, we had a decent time in the mountains, but once again, there was an awful lot of drinking, because the college friends were there. Then about 1980, the old farmhouse came up for sale in Charlotte, and that's the one my husband built. My husband's grandfather built in 1970. So we moved to Charlotte. We bought that old farmhouse back. Those were the best years of my life when we bought that old farmhouse back. We had goats and guineas and chickens and a great big yard, and an old barn and a silo, and I collect eggs, and I loved that. I was at home with that. And we lived, right there with my mother-in-law and my father-in-law and my brother-in-law, sister-in-law. We were all right there together. It was all family. And I loved my in-laws, and they loved me, at least at least then. That's my cuckoo clock making a racket. The bird actually does come out. I've loved him since I was a kid. Anyways, so we got to Charlotte, and in Charlotte, I started teaching junior high school, and things were pretty normal. The drinking wasn't out of control because then we didn't get to see our college friends every day like we did when we were living in the college town. And so, it was just on weekends that we would party. And normally I did the cooking, and I would stay in the kitchen the whole time because I just didn't like to be, if there was more than 4 people there, that, I was done. I eventually kept on with my career, and I tell you, I had a wonderful career. I eventually was promoted to assistant principal and then to principal the last 14 years of my of my of my professional career. And I was a totally different person in my professional life. I never thought, oh, I can't be in front of people. I can't stand in front of my staff. I can't do this. I can't do that. I never did that. I was a totally different person than I was in my personal life. And so I had an absolutely wonderful career. And there, for those of you who have had a wonderful career, I have another quote I got to share with you, because your profession is not what brings home your paycheck. Your profession is what you what you were put on earth to do with such passion and such intensity that it becomes spiritual in nature. And that is exactly the way I felt about my profession and working with children and working with teachers. And when I retired in 2004, it left a hole in my heart. And that's when the drinking took off, folks. That's retirement was not a good thing for me to do because things were under control. I didn't drink at work. Thank God I didn't drink at work. That has haunted me when I did step 4 and 5. That the drinking and what would have happened if I had been drinking at work, it haunted me for a long, long time because I've come to become very thankful that didn't happen. I cannot imagine hurting children. And I think we had a really good time. I told jokes every morning over the intercom, and they loved it. I'm sure the teachers could have killed me, but kids loved it. Um, but that left a hole in my heart when I retired, and the drinking really took off really bad. And we eventually had to build a home because the state took our farm for the outer belt loop. And my husband and I both admitted we were workaholics. I come home in the afternoon, I always had a meal on the table. But after that, I would do teacher evaluations and all kinds of stuff. And he was always doing appraisal work. And, I became a very absent wife. And since the drinking increased so bad, that's when, after I retired, is when I started hiding it. We had a big house, so there were lots of places to hide it, but it's not really all that easy to hide beer. But I managed to do a pretty good job of it by storing it in the attic and deep in the closet and those kinds of places. And I did some interims after I retired, and that's when I started thinking, ooh, I can't buy it here because that's where I bought it last time, and I can't buy it there because they might recognize me and think, ooh, that lady sure is buying a lot of alcohol. So I started planning where I was going to go to get my alcohol, even as I did interims, I did that for about 2 years, and then that was over too. Finally, in 2010, it was for you, it would be so boring, but I'm going to get on to some better stuff. In 2010, I drank so much and I took BC powder so often because if I didn't have a headache, I thought I would. So I just take a BC powder. And I take a leave a lot. And one day in June, I went to the bathroom and there was nothing but blood. And so I was rushed to the hospital and I stayed there for 2 or 3 days, and they gave me blood, and it was a bleeding ulcer on the duodenum where the large intestine, I think, connects to the small intestine, or it was on a connection. Anyway, a big connection down there in your intestinal tract. So I got home and, I knew I wasn't supposed to drink anymore, but being the good alcoholic I was, what did I do? I thought, well, they cauterized that thing, so it's fixed. So, there I go. I started drinking again. And that didn't last 2 days. I was back in the hospital because the same thing happened. And I remember the doctor standing over me and said, what am I going to do with you? And I was just like, I don't know. What are you going to do? But my hemoglobin was so low that if I hadn't gotten to the hospital, my brother-in-law came to get me and get me there. If he hadn't been home, I could have just laid there, and I feel certain I could have just died then because my hemoglobin was like 5. So while I was laying in the hospital and they were giving me blood and all this other kind of stuff, my husband, his name was Sam, and he started looking for places to send me. And he gave me 2 choices. The morning he came into the room, he said, are you finished? And I said, yes. He said, then you can either go to Tennessee or you can go to Pavillon, which is halfway between me and your dad and sister. So, of course, I chose Pavillon. And he managed to have them keep me in the hospital until he could take me straight from the hospital to Pavilion. So that meant somebody else did all the packing for me and everything. But anyway, I got to Pavilion, and I will tell you immediately it was a love affair. It was a love affair. I loved the setting. I mean, you know, being a mountain girl, how much better can you get? I love the setting. I love the staff. It's just so special to be able to talk with someone and work with people and work with them when they speak the same language you speak. It's amazing. And the food, you know, the food was good, but the routine was even better. I like routines. And so, you know, given everything put together, I loved it. And I was there. I didn't want anybody to try to talk me into extended care because I'm too feisty not to say, no, don't try to talk me into it. I won't go if you try to talk me into it. But I decided I'd go to extended care. And that was a real blessing. And you know, when I was there, I did what they told me to do. They kept saying, you need to get a sponsor. You need to get a sponsor. I got a sponsor. Her name was Whitney, and she was with the Columbus group. And every night, I talked her into it. I said, you know, I'm easy. I'm going to be easy because I'm in treatment at Pavilion. And they took the bus to Columbus, the Pavilion bus. So she knew all about that. So I guess she believed me. But I called her every night from the deck at the woman's house after she became my sponsor. And the most special thing is, on my first year anniversary, she called me to make sure somebody was going to be at the meeting for me in Charlotte. Now, how special is that? And I still have her number. I really need to call that woman because what a blessing it was. But anyway, when I was at Pavilion, I loved it. I didn't want to leave. I did exactly what they told me to do. But boy, was I wary about going home. I didn't know what I was going to run into. So got home. And of course, everybody is like eggshells because they walk into your house, they see a Coke can and they think, ooh, she's drinking again. You know, it's just really because beer was my drink of choice. And it was uncomfortable. It was really awkward. My husband and I weren't talking very much until one morning, 4 months home, I said, are we ever going to talk? And we went into the kitchen and sat down. And he proceeded to tell me that he still loved me, but he wasn't in love with me anymore. And he wanted to live alone. Well, he stayed in the house for a while. And of course, I tried as hard as I could because I thought, surely I can make this happen. But, you know, I'll never forget, just before he moved out, the saddest thing, we were in the basement and I said, I need a hug. And he looked at me and he said, you need a hug? And I thought, oh shit, this is what I've done. Because he was a good man. And I wasn't a good wife, especially those last 6 years. I just was not a good wife. Food was on the table, but you know, that's not the most important thing. Anyways, we managed to, he did move out eventually. And then a little bit later, I got an email and he told me that he had pancreatic cancer. And he died in 2018. And he did not leave me his half of the house, even though we built it together and we had lived in it since 96. And I had a really hard time getting over that. I mean, I had to think about that a lot. And then I decided, you know what? He knew that I had a pension. He knew that I could get his Social Security before I got mine. And it was his right to do what he wanted to do with his half of the house. So, you know, I got over that. And so what I decided to do was I needed to sell the house because I really didn't want to be making those house payments anymore. And I decided, with a lot of prayer that what I needed to do was to move to South Carolina to be closer to my dad and my sister, because my dad is 92 years old and my sister has stage 4 COPD. So I've been here since 2019, about June of 2019. And as soon as I didn't tell you, but as soon as I got out of treatment, I did 90 and 90. I got myself a temporary sponsor who just happened to be a Pavillon alum. And I mean, that was an accident. No, there are no accidents. I take that back. And I did my 90 and 90, and I started doing service work. And so, you know, I was in the middle of the herd for a long time. And then when I moved to Seneca, South Carolina, I'd already been to a meeting down here, so I knew where a good one was. So I went to a meeting, I joined the home group that day, and I am now their treasurer. And I've been their treasurer for almost 2 years now. So I'm a year and a half. So, you know, accountability means a lot to me. So if I get involved like that, now I don't like to chair meetings because I have to put myself out front to do that. So if what I can do in the background, I'm more than happy to do. It doesn't matter what it is. I'm more than happy to do it. But anyway, now, you know, that being said, I want to talk just a tad about the steps, because the steps are really important. And the lady that spoke last week did this, and I was so appreciative. And I think it's a little bit different for everyone. But steps 1, 2, and 3, I really think I took those 3 steps in the hospital. I was done. And I knew that if I went back in there, I was going to die. I felt certain I was going to die. Now, my higher power was not really clear at that point. Wolf helped out a whole lot with that. And we had a long conversation, and when we got finished, he said, you know, you believe a lot like the Native American Indians do. And that was not surprising to me, because I had been told from an early age that my great-grandmother was a full-blooded Cherokee. And sure, I have a picture of her, and sure enough, she looks like she is. But one of these days, I'm gonna do the ancestry thing, and I'm gonna finalize that rumor or whatever it was. Step 4, I knew my sponsor really, really well, and so I was extremely thorough. I was almost a year sober before I did that, and I was very thorough. And you know, the wonderful thing about that whole thing was, she never asked me a question. She never interrupted me. She never tried to give me advice. Nothing. She listened to me intently, and we have never spoken about it since then. And the funny thing is, when I've listened to 5th steps, I don't remember what they say. I listen intently, but I don't remember. So, you know, that worked for me. She is now my best friend. So, you know, she just spent 10 days with me not too long ago. We had a ball. Step 6 was extremely painful, but I've come to know something about these character defects. I don't mind the word defect, because anything can become defective. And, you know, anger is okay sometimes, but when taken to an extreme, it's defective. And so I've learned with my character defects that it's really how you handle them when they start to become defective. And it's with new situations, the ones you think are gone, lo and behold, here they might come again. New situations bring things out, and it doesn't matter whether it's new people you meet or whether you go to a new meeting. Moving down here to Seneca, South Carolina, really brought some defects back out in me, like impatience. And I had to work on that. On step 7, yeah, I asked that they be removed. I do other things to get them removed, but they come back. I'm a human being. On step 8, I didn't have any amends that I would not make. I do have amends that I cannot make. And my sponsor had me write amends sometimes. So like before I made amends to my dad and sister, and I read them to her. And so before I came down and I made amends to them. And she told me at first, don't be making any amends without telling me, which was probably a good thing because I had stolen a set of silverware one time and I was going to take it back. And she advised me to get rid of it and not try to make amends for that because it probably wouldn't be a real good idea. I have made an awful lot of living amends, of course. On step 10, I do that throughout the day. I know when I've screwed up. I know it almost immediately when I've screwed up. And I don't have a lot of interaction with people because of who I am. So I don't have the opportunities that a real extroverted people would have that's really out in the world. But I know when I messed up and um, I do the amends I need to make immediately. On step 11, prayer, I'm not really good with that. I asked my sponsor, I said, how do you pray? And she said, I want you to write 4 prayers. That's when I started writing prayers. And when, not every day writing prayers, but when major things like before I was going to move here, I wrote a prayer. And with step 12, I have sponsored and taken through the steps 2 ladies from Pavilion and a number of other ladies. And I've been the lit rep, the secretary rep, and now I'm the treasurer. And I stay away from those things I know I'm not good at because they make me anxious and I don't like to feel anxious. Now, let me tell you a couple of things that are the best thing about sobriety. Oh God, where are those things? I can piddle and be alone all day long in this house and never think about a drink. That is wonderful. I can't tell you how good it is. I can laugh out loud spontaneously when I am alone at crazy things I hear on the radio. When the family calls, I don't have to worry. When they call me and I pick up the phone, I don't have to worry that they're going to think I'm drinking anymore because I know I'm not. And my mind is clear to think about life things, to think about magical things, which I do, to think about new interests and new ideas. It's just, there is nothing better than being sober. And I did what everybody else wanted me to do for the first 60 years of my life. Kathy's going to do what she wants to do for the rest of her life. So there you go. I'm done.